Welcome to All Things Savannah. I'm Frank Morrow.
And I'm Danielle Oak.
We have a special treat for you today because we're going to recap Danielle's great visit overseas.
Yes.
She spent some time this summer touring some places in Europe. I really haven't, to be honest with you, had a chance to really ask her about all of the elements of it. So this is our opportunity to actually sort of do that. So
Let's get into
where
it.
should we begin? You want to do it as far as how you did it chronologically, where you went first and second and so on? Or
Yeah, I guess so. We could do it chronologically, and I'll just give like a quick overview.
Okay.
And so I did my first solo trip as someone of an advanced age, such as myself. Did this probably like 30 years ago, before I was married. I did a solo trip to Europe, and but this was the first time I've done it in a long time, and it's a whole different animal. So I went for 2 weeks to Italy, and then met a friend of mine there. So that's kind of how the trip began, was meeting my friend in this small seaside town in Italy.
All right.
And the trip just got built on either end from there.
So let me ask you about what made you decide on Italy, because we all know we would love to travel a lot of different places. There's a finite amount of time and funds usually.
Right.
How did you come to decide on Italy?
Well, it was because of this friend of mine. I had been there 10 years ago with my friend Anita, and we were in this lovely seaside town. And those of you who know the movie and the book Enchanted April, it was inspired by Enchanted April. So she planned on going this year, 10 years later, for her 60th birthday, and invited a whole group of women, the same group of women who went to the original, who were on the original trip. And I was the only one who was able to make it.
No, it was just the two of you.
It was just the two of us.
Wow.
So when friends found out I was going to Italy, they said, well, you're going to Rome as well, right? And I said, I hadn't planned on it. And I was cajoled and encouraged and
arm twisted.
Yes, and it was really difficult because I just didn't want to go to Rome.
I know.
I just didn't want to go to Florence. But
a hassle, but somebody has
exactly.
To do it, right?
So it just grew from there.
So that sort of expanded the itinerary, maybe beyond what you had intended to do.
Oh yeah, it did actually.
And half the battle on trips, we all know, is accommodations.
Right.
Where will you stay? How close will you stay to the things you really want to see? So how did you get that all sorted out?
Right. Well, the first order of the day was getting my hotel for this town called Levanto. And so I found that, and I actually couldn't decide, so I booked 2 and then canceled 2 months ago.
Smart idea.
One.
A lot of people do that.
Well, you just have to, I don't know, I just didn't know which one. I just wanted to see which one I felt like going to, right? And a friend of mine said, if you go to Rome, I've got a place where you can stay at a convent. And it was very inexpensive, and that was the answer right there. So
now some people might have considered that a little bit of a deal breaker.
Right, exactly.
But you have told me it was wonderful.
It was lovely. It was a dormitory, and it wasn't. It was a convent, but it wasn't a cloistered convent. So the nuns were out and about doing their business. You'd bump into the nuns, and it was lovely, and they were lovely, and. As I said, there were dormitory rooms, and after coming from Florence and having just a regular hotel in Florence, actually it was an old hotel in Florence, it was so refreshing to go into a dormitory room where you thought, this is all you really need, is a clean room, a bed,
right?
A clean room, and your own bathroom, and that was good. It was very good, actually.
Now, the meals were sort of wrapped into that, or you had to go sort of fend for your own?
Well,
meals?
For breakfast. Now, I could have opted in to 3 meals a day, but I thought, I'm in Italy, I'm not going to do that. And so I had a very simple breakfast at the convent, and then I made my way throughout my day. So.
Well, I'm happy to know, looking back, reflecting, you had a lot of great pictures and a lot of great video, and I'm sure that was only scratching the surface as to what was posted on Instagram. But Danielle is very intrepid. You know that if you know the program, and she's very curious, and it played out during this trip as I was able to follow her from home. And you went to a lot of amazing places,
Yeah.
met a lot of wonderful people. So let's talk about what sort of stands out in your mind as you look back.
Well, getting off the plane in Florence was one of those like sort of moments, and it was just amazing after traveling for as long as I did.
It's a long flight.
A bunch
and
of
multiple stops,
multiple
right?
flights, right?
Yeah.
So to get off the airplane, and so many places in Europe, you actually get off the airplane with the rolling staircase that comes at you.
Right.
So you're at the top of the stairs, and I could see the mountains, or the very, very large hills that surround Florence.
Must have been beautiful.
And it was. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm here. Like, because I've been planning on this for almost a year. And to actually get there was amazing. So that was the first moment of, wow, I'm not home anymore. And this is where reality changes.
Yeah, that's grand. I mean,
it was grand.
Because that's kind of what we all want when we go to some place, you know, that moment of arrival, that feeling that you've actually gotten there after all of the background and planning.
And I think we all that's exactly what we all get, is when we've gotten there. So especially if it's a big trip, especially if it's been something you've been planning for a long time, to actually arrive that first day, that first moment that you get off the plane is, so that was fantastic. In Florence, I got to see an opera recital at the home of a prince. We didn't meet.
Sounds exotic.
We met his dogs. He sent his dogs out for us.
Well, you know.
That was absolutely incredible. To see opera, Italian opera in Italy was mind-blowing.
And the setting was just
The setting was
right?
everything a setting should be, right? And so that was fantastic. I went to a shishi party on a Wednesday night. I got to go to an archaeology museum, which I really love. I love ancient archaeology.
Well, yeah. And we've talked about archaeology on the program
we had
as
a
well.
great show on that.
Yeah.
And then of course the art and the architecture, which is just spellbinding. So that was just in Florence.
Wow.
And in Rome, I did the museum things.
Which you must. You cannot go right without doing that.
So I did as many as I could, which wasn't actually, I didn't go to the Vatican. I didn't go to some of the biggies because it was actually hard to get tickets by the time I got my act together. And so I did go and see another opera recital, and I saw a string quartet in an old church.
Oh, I'm sure that was elegant and beautiful.
So those are the kinds of things I really value. And I did get to see the Colosseum, Palatine Hill, all of that. That was phenomenal as well. The tour guide was an archaeologist, just tons of information.
Now, we talked about this on the show recently about curiosity and where it leads us. It leads us to do a show that we're doing here, but it also leads us in our private lives, just like it's doing that for you. So you are known to go off the beaten path. We talked about that. So explain to me how you decided where you were going, how you learned about where you were going.
Yeah.
What did that process look like? Because I'm assuming you did that when you got there, but maybe you did some planning ahead of time.
I did some planning ahead of time. Because I was alone, I sort of carved out a schedule for myself, which kept me busy. So I had something on basically every other day, not quite every day. And so as I moved into those activities, it's almost impossible not to follow your nose, as you say, and be curious. So my opera discovery was just that. It was a discovery. That was not planned, but my very first day in Florence, I was walking down the street and heard opera and followed my nose and I like to get into buildings and keep going as far as I can before someone stops me.
That's what I love about that.
So I found out about this recital, and so that's why I sort of stumbled upon that. But the best discoveries you make are the ones I think, don't expect and don't plan on. So I made a lot of discoveries along the way that were just by virtue of looking for something else, to be perfectly honest.
Now, you don't speak fluent Italian, or do you?
No, I speak no Italian.
No Italian at all. I know you brushed
Grazie.
up though. Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So how does one sort of operate in a country like, even with so many tourists, in order to find the off the beaten path things?
Well, I just didn't ask anybody, to be honest with you. I didn't talk to anybody. I just literally walked. And I tried to get into places, and I stopped into places that looked interesting. I have to say, there were not many people who spoke a lot of English. I mean, which is kind of surprising for being a tourist city,
I think
both
you're right.
Florence and Rome.
Yeah.
But I just, you just figure out a way to do things. I mean, people will find a way to, if you want to buy something, people will sell something to you. They'll
communicate with you.
They'll find English, but but for other things, I just thought, whatever, however this unfolds, we'll just kind of wait and see however it unfolds. And people were really, really pleasant in all of Italy. They were just lovely people. So
what were the surprising moments? Now, we talked about some of the expected ahas maybe, but because it's an unplanned trip in some aspects, there had to be places and times and circumstances where you went, well, I wasn't ready for that one.
Yeah.
Was there anything that stands out there?
Well, Florence went pretty much to expectations, I would say. It's a small city. It's easy to manage. There weren't really any surprises there. Rome was a surprise. Rome was a metropolis, a huge urban city, and you're one of millions.
Sure.
And it was less personal than Florence, a lot less personal, but it was a huge space, and I was not prepared for how magnificent it was.
Really?
I was in part of, I stayed near the Vatican, about 10 minutes away, 10-minute walk, and it's very much a 19th century neighborhood, as opposed to other neighborhoods which are more medieval or Renaissance leaning or classic. So, you've got ancient shouldered up to medieval, shouldered up to, the next stage. So that was surprising to me. I didn't really expect to see it all the way it unfolded.
Sure.
I guess.
Meaning that it was sort of not in sync, basically.
Yeah,
It was
actually,
as it was. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I knew that they would make the most of their ancient sites because, of course, that's what Rome is. But it was just fascinating to see the layers of history butted up right next to each other, plus modern history. So, modern buildings and modern people living in ancient and, places that were hundreds of years old.
Yeah, a functioning metropolis.
A functioning metropolis. I mean, some would argue that Rome is not a functioning metropolis.
Well, that could be said about a lot of places.
Yeah, true,
right?
true. In fact, apparently there's some Jubilee celebration going on next year for the Catholic Church. So this year is all about making Rome look great. So there was tons of scaffolding and public works going on while I was there. So traffic was exceptionally slow, and
which is not good to begin with, I understand.
No, so I was there mid-June, so it's not the high season yet, so they didn't have as many people as I'm sure they have now. So it wasn't nearly as crowded as I thought, as it could have been. So with all these works going on, hadn't gotten to a critical point, at least when I was there. I'm sure it's no fun now. I'm sure it's really challenging.
Well, if you are just joining us, you're watching All Things Savannah with Frank and Danielle. This may feel like All Things Italy because we are talking about Danielle's great European trip in the summer of 2024. And if you weren't looking at the beginning of the show, she started in Florence in Italy and went to Rome, and we're sort of tracking her as she moves place to place and what she was doing. You cannot in any way talk about a trip to Italy without talking about food.
Right.
And I know you love good food and you love good wine.
Yes.
So tell us about the best experience in those categories.
Well, so for the food, I I do not mind going to a restaurant by myself. It doesn't bother me at all. But what I realized about myself, this trip in particular, that I really prefer to eat with other people because I like to enjoy the food with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so
social as much as anything.
It's
right?
very, and everybody knows that food is social.
Sure.
But I realized that I actually didn't want to spend my money in restaurants if I was just going to eat by myself. That just wasn't worth it to me. So I probably ate out 2 times actually when I was in Florence and Rome.
Really?
At restaurants, yeah. And I had access to a fridge. So I did the salad, charcuterie, cheese stuff, and of course like the wine at the grocery store is phenomenal. So I was able to get great wine, and I kind of had my own picnic in my room or wherever I happened to go on my own. So that was great. When I was in Levanto, I went out for dinner a number of times with my friend, and that was fantastic. The food was great.
What dish stands out to you? Is there anything you hadn't tried before the trip and that you loved?
There were 2 dishes that were fantastic that I really loved, both pasta, unsurprisingly, and I had I'm not sure what kind of pasta it was. It was a thick spaghetti-like pasta, but super thick, and it had a white boar sauce.
Ooh, sounds good.
Not white boar, like it was a white sauce with boar in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So initially it looked rather unappetizing actually. They could have done a little sprinkle of parsley on top, but they didn't do that. So it's like, yeah, that looks pretty great.
Didn't dress it up.
They did not dress it up. But I took one biteful because I thought it was pork and like just plain pork. And I took one bite and I thought, oh, well, this is really good.
Heard the choir of angels.
Yes,
right?
it was. And it was actually at a little bit of a wine tasting on a farm. So they had a couple different wines. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the dolce vita. This is that moment that everybody writes home about. This is the one that everybody wants to have, where you sit down with wine and a wonderful pasta. And it was just a small serving. It wasn't huge, which I appreciated as well.
You bet. Yeah.
So that was a great meal.
Ooh, that sounds good. Again, that's an unexpected pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Not that you wouldn't think that it would be,
right.
But
you know what? I love to I love ingredients. So I bought a lot of mozzarella and honestly, the dairy in Italy is spectacular.
Outrageously good, I'm
The cheese is great, and the charcuterie was fantastic.
So, is there a alternate? Did you sort of like balance that off with the salad sort of thing and fruit? I noticed some of your some of your social media showed pictures of fruit and a lot of different things.
Yeah, no, I ate healthy. Like I didn't eat a lot of pasta, so I didn't eat a lot of pizza either. So I didn't want to do the gluten-free thing because I'm sort of in that road, and I thought I'm just going to eat the food I'm given, sort of thing, and eat the food that's present, and just let them do what they do well, and that was magic.
Wow. And so in the wine category, you said that the grocery store wine was good, but I think you spent some time with a sommelier, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, I did. So I had booked probably about 4 or 5 tours through a company called Viator, and they just made it so simple to basically go shopping for tours where I happen to be. You put in the date, and if you want to say Florence, they give you this long listing of all the things you can do. They make it very, very easy. Yeah. So I thought that was an easy one-stop shop for me. So I did that both in Florence and in Rome. And one of the things they offered was this wine school in Rome. And I thought, fantastic, that sounds great. Absolutely. And it was great. Although 5 minutes before I got there, I thought, you know what? There aren't going to be any Italians at this thing. Because Italians know their own wine. Why would they go to a wine school?
That makes sense. You're right.
So I sat next to this really cute couple from New Jersey and other folks from Texas, and
a little bit of home goes with you.
Oh gosh, but it was great because this guy took us. He's a great instructor. First of all, he's a great sommelier, but a great instructor too. And it's a school, so that's the point.
Sure.
So they're trying to tell you all about the wines. But he took us through all these wine regions in Italy. So a bottle per every region, and told us what the grape was and why, all the details. It was really great.
That sounds like a smart way of doing it.
It was super fun.
So then you get to, Rome is how many days?
So I was in Rome for a good week,
Okay.
like 7 days. And then I hopped on a train to Levanto, which was, I think I had to take 3 trains to get there, because it's a little town on the coast.
And it's on the coast, right?
Yeah, so if you know where Cinque Terre is, it's along that string of little towns.
Western side of Italy.
The western coast,
Yeah.
Liguria.
Right.
So that was just wonderful. I stayed in another small hotel, and my friend was staying in an Airbnb, just literally a 5-minute walk away, and that was like the first time I feel like I really relaxed, actually.
I would think so.
Yeah.
After doing the cities, sort of, I think, when you go from one environment that's a urban area with all the urban connections and
Right.
things, it's nice maybe to get to a place that feels like it's a little slower and calmer.
And because I'd been there before, I kind of knew the lay of the land, and the same thing with my friend Anita. So, and then being together too it was just great. So,
Yeah.
so that was super nice.
And you celebrated her birthday, you said,
Yes, so we had a great dinner. We ordered every dessert on the menu.
right? That's the way to do it.
Fantastic. I highly recommend. Do that on your birthday, every dessert on the menu.
Absolutely.
We had such a great time. We visited nearby towns. The town itself, Levanto, is a beach town, really.
It's beautiful. Your pictures on social media were fabulous.
It's such a darling, sweet, happy town. And because of it being just outside of the range of the Cinque Terre, it doesn't nearly get the tourists in. So what we saw mostly were Italian people on vacation.
Ah.
And kids running around the streets in their bare feet, in their bathing suits, and it just felt so nice. It felt so family oriented.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's much more normal, I guess.
It was. It
Word,
was normal. It wasn't about the shopping. It wasn't about fancy this, fancy that. It wasn't about the museums.
Yeah.
The architecture was charming, but it wasn't. We're not talking. Super high style architecture there. So that was wonderful. That was a nice break, and we were on the beach one day. We went to Portofino, which is a Shishi beach town. Chanel on one side and Hermes on the other side, but that was exceptionally beautiful. I have to say, it was really gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. But it was a lovely week there.
I was a little surprised. Go ahead. You were going to say.
I was just going to say, and then I went back to Rome after that for a couple more days.
I was a little surprised when I looked at the weather. I was checking to see, what kind of weather did they present to you, and I found it to be pretty hot. Right? I think it was a warm time, almost as warm as it's here in Savannah.
Yeah. Florence was a little bit cooler, which was nice. It was
a little further north.
Yeah, and then Rome was sweltering, absolutely sweltering. There was a heat advisory on the day that I went to the Colosseum, actually. Yeah. I almost thought that they were going to call it off, cancel it. So I was that lady. I took an umbrella and a mister, and it was a 4-hour tour, and I don't think I could have done it without the umbrella, actually.
I'm not surprised.
To keep the sun off, because it was brutal that day, yeah.
So again, it was pretty much like here. It really didn't, maybe a little cooler in some spots.
And not as humid.
And not as humid, right. Well,
so to be honest with you, I felt like a real soldier. I felt like, oh yeah, I can handle this. But Levanto was actually, it rained almost the whole week.
Oh.
And I think it's the last day we went to the beach, it was fine. It was a nice day. I mean, it didn't ruin our spirits at all.
No. And that's a nice way to wrap it up as well. And so now that brings us, you're 2 weeks in, and that's you're going back to Rome, or you're
so that's after Levanto. That was 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then so I went back to Rome for about 4 or 5 days and filled in the gaps for the things I hadn't gotten the first time around. I mean,
a second bite
lucky.
of the apple.
Yeah. I mean, it was really exceptional to be able to do that. I have to say. And it made me greedy, and I wanted to go back to Florence and do a couple more things there too. See, this is the thing. When you fly first class, you can never go back to coach, right?
That's right.
So getting to have a trip like this makes you want to have more.
I didn't honestly think Danielle was coming back.
I knew I was making him really nervous.
I was thinking she's AWOL, and she's actually just told me that, it's a 3-4 week trip, but, it just may never end.
Well, I hadn't bought a return ticket either, which I think...
Which you told me.
Which made me even more nervous.
It did. Now, let's talk about lessons learned, advice to people. People, we all share things these days and we learn an awful lot. So tell us, if you had to say 3 things about what you learned, what you would advise people to do or not do, anything come to mind?
Well, I'm going to be sharing some of these things in my YouTube channel later in the next month or 2.
Look forward to that.
But I think one of the things, this was a bit of an experiment for myself. And I shouldn't say it was premeditated because I booked the time before I realized and thought it through that I'm going to be doing this on my own. And then when I realized I was going to do it on my own, I was like, oh my gosh, am I nuts? I'm not going with anybody. I don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy.
I'm not going to do it. Wait, I must do it.
Exactly. It was kind of like that. So when I got to Florence, there was no frame of reference. So one of the things when you're traveling with someone else, you can be in a completely new environment, but if you're with somebody, they provide that familiarity, that one little percentage of normalcy that you're used to, and that can help ground you. But if you don't have that, you have to figure out what your new normal is, that phrase. And you usually think about that in times of crisis, but everything is different. Literally everything is different. So you have to figure out a new way of moving through your life on vacation or
and
on
just to
voyage.
set the stage, you're in a foreign land. So it's one thing to be doing it in the United States where people speak the same language, but you're on your own in a foreign land.
Right.
So that is something that would certainly make a difference.
Yeah, so it took me a couple of days to kind of find my sea legs, I have to say.
I bet.
It was a couple of days before I was starting to remember to take my, my vitamins, my supplements at the right time. Like I was like missing out on that sort of thing. Eating at normal times. I was like sort of snacking. All of a sudden I'd find out it was 3 o'clock.
When you came off a plane where obviously
there's that
the time
too.
differential.
Yeah, there's that. Right? So that was one eye-opener.
Yeah.
It was, wow, it's not immediate joy and thrill once you get off the plane.
Sure.
You have to figure out how you're going to do this particular amount of time.
And adjust to it.
The other thing, the one thing that I love is being able to feel like you're getting a sense of how people live in a particular environment. So whatever it is that helps you do that, and I find that taking a step back from being a tourist is a good way of looking at a place through new eyes. So, if you're on your way to a foreign country and you've got a list, that you want to do, you must hit these places, take time, give yourself some margin at points during the trip, whether it's daily or whatever, to just absorb what you're seeing.
That's
and
great advice.
Yeah, because, and if you give yourself that margin, you have time to think, but also time to do that exploring and that nosing around.
Yeah.
If you are not a slave to the tourist schedule, like we're doing this in the morning, we're having lunch here, we're having this in the afternoon, and tonight we're doing this, then it just frees yourself up, and it frees you to see what life is like for people who actually live
That's
there.
really good advice. I think it's not checking the boxes, just saying, as you said, we've got to do this, this, and this, and then tomorrow we're going to do this, this, and this. So it allows you to actually experience it and be cognizant of it, which is what we all want, of course. I was surprised when you got back that you adjusted to me quite well. We talked about the hour differential going. Coming back, it's another however many hours. You told me you had a 9-hour plane flight.
Yeah.
9-hour plane flight.
Yeah.
And yet, I think you took about a day to sort of get your bearings back here at home, and then you were back into the routine again, which I was, in a selfish manner, I was happy about. But a couple of days later, you were like, you've never been away. It was just amazing to me. Is that did I misread that, or were you really?
I had a secret. Pills. Actually, I do, and if anyone cares, just reach out, and I'll give you the name of them. They're homeopathic. It's not CBD. Homeopathic pills that you just chew. You take these little supplements every 2 hours on the plane, and it helps. I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't really know what it does. There's ginger in it.
Can't be all bad. Or...
Yeah, it's an herbal soother. I don't know. But on the way there I took them, and on the way back I took them, and I bounced back very quickly. I mean, I had some days where I was sleepy and I was super tired when I went to bed, but nothing like I've had horrible jet lag in the past.
It can be.
I mean, it took me out for a full week.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting. I just thought with the length of the trip and the length of the actual mileage, I just thought, we're not going to be doing anything for a few days. You know, we're not going to be planning anything for a few days. And you were right there on that Tuesday when you came back. You were like, we met, we had coffee, and you look like fresh as the morning dew.
It's kind of miraculous. I would highly recommend. So,
well, whatever you're doing, it clearly worked, and people will be interested. There's no question about that. All right, what have we missed? Have we missed anything? Or we feel like you've recapped?
Well, after Italy, I had the joy of going to Spain.
Oh, I didn't want to leave that out. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
My sister and her husband live in Spain.
Wonderful.
And that is like a second home to me. We've been visiting them for, oh gosh, I don't even know how many years. Anyway, I've been there so many times I can't count.
Malaga, Spain.
Malaga, right. And
beautiful
so
place.
I knew that after having a really intense 3.5 weeks in Italy, that I could go to Spain and totally unplug, and they were going to take care of me.
Well, see, maybe that's part of your recovery. That was
that could be.
In addition to your little supplements there, I think that seeing some family is a nice way to kind of close it up and wrap it up, I think.
Yeah. So whenever you're fortunate enough to be able to go away for anything beyond 10 days, you do need to figure out how to pace yourself. I mean, you can be, traveling and vacation. Rome, Italy was not vacation in the sense of sitting by the pool and having a cold drink and reading a book.
Sure.
Spain was that vibe for me.
So that was the come down.
That was definitely the come down.
Yeah.
So, expectations for your own trip, your own vacation. I think it's really important to get your head in the right space when you go away. What do you think you're going to get out of it? What are your plans? What are your goals? What do you know is going to happen? And being, kind of flexible and giving yourself, margin to change your mind or do something different.
Yeah.
And then, travel is not easy.
That's not.
It's brutal. Travel is brutal. Flying is brutal.
It's tough these days. It's so much different than it used to be.
Well,
people say that about a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really believe flying has changed, just dramatically.
Oh, it has, and not just because of 9/11.
Yeah, not just because of it.
That's a huge part of it.
Security.
But and COVID and things are just so wonky out there.
Yeah.
The last 2 trips I've made to Europe, there've been missed flights. Both times in Paris, interestingly. Yeah, Paris, when they're moving you through, they just don't care. They can't be bothered. They know you've got a flight. They just don't care.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
But, the waiting and the standing and the rushing and the waiting again after you've rushed and the confusion, you got to prepare yourself.
And, connecting flights these days are so much more iffy than what they used to be, at least from my recollection. I don't ever remember having difficulty making a connecting flight. But I hear horror stories these days.
It's almost like you've got to build in time.
Plan for it.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason why I missed the flights I did was because there was only an hour and a half to get through customs and to, you go out, you go back in, you grab your bags, you throw your bags on another belt. It was just not reasonable to think that can all happen in an hour and a half, especially if your previous flight is. So you kind of, I think now when you book flights, you kind of need to think, okay, I like to hop on one, after another, but it's almost smarter to give yourself like a 3-hour layover.
I think that's very true. Yeah, because the layovers are in some cases 3-4 hours, depending on weather, depending on, we know we just had a data outage that affected the airlines, so that took everything off the map, basically. It really literally
and
took
I think there's still people who are stuck.
There are. They've had backlogs for days.
Yeah.
The major airlines have been, having headaches over this, and I'm sure passengers are not happy.
Right. So, they talk about revenge travel post-COVID and how people are just so fed up. They're going to Europe, they don't care. They're going to Asia, they don't care.
Yes.
So with that sort of mindset going into it, it's good to know, it's good to be aware that there will be cancellations, there will be snafus of all sorts.
Be ready for it.
Be ready for it.
Well, I'm happy to say you look rested and relaxed.
Thank you.
And ready to go again for the next few months of All Things Savannah. We've got a lot of good things planned, as we have alluded to and teased in the last couple of shows. And we want to point out that our next show is going to be something that you can sort of be an extension of your vacation, maybe, because it's a wine tasting. And we're going to do it, as you know, with Dana Lee of the Savannah Wine Institute. Pair some food with some wines, and it sounds like it's going to be great fun.
Yeah, I think it will be.
All right, coming up on the next All Things Savannah, we hope you join us. Danielle, thanks for recounting your beautiful trip, and it's good to have you back.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Take care.